Hey guys, what's up? VA Merc here, and today we're going to be answering a question that gets asked quite often, and the question is, what's better, the FAL or the HK91? Now, I've had this question asked on my channel before, on one of my videos, actually on a handful of videos, and I've seen it on the forums quite often as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide some factual evidence too in the form of slow motion video, and as well as opinion, my experiences with this rifle, with both rifles actually. And which is something to bring up here, that the answers you're going to get generally when you ask anybody are all opinionated, which is not incorrect because you are asking someone based on their experiences, so you will get an opinion in return. So let's start off here with the question of what is your need? Why do you want this rifle, or why do you want a rifle, and why does it need to be 308 and all that stuff? The answer to that, there's a few answers. These are not the only answers to it, but one could be your military, or you're some capacity of defense for the country, or maybe you're a LEO, law enforcement officer, SHTF for fun, or a range toy. Of course, collectability, but that's, who cares if it's a collector's gun, right? It doesn't really matter. But those are the four answers I'm thinking of. There's other ones, there could be other ones. You can let me know. So as we're going along, we're going to kind of try to fit in the different things into each one of those categories to kind of maybe narrow it down for you to see what fits and what doesn't fit. So we're going to talk about the similarities and differences, and then we'll get into the actual differences and talk about it more in depth. It's going to be kind of a longer video. Hopefully I can knock it out real quick. I don't want to make it too long because then it gets boring. So let's get into the similarities, or what I like to call negligible differences. One is obviously caliber. There's no difference between the two. The magazine size is exactly the same. They're both 20-round box-fed magazines, or box-fed magazine guns. And I got to show you guys the HK here. Give them some equal airtime. They are, like I said, both 308, both 20-round magazines. You can obviously find 30-round magazines and other larger capacity magazines for them. So that's pretty much the same, or negligible. When we get into the negligible differences here, the weight and the length. The weight of the HK93 is about 9 pounds. The length of it is about 40 inches with about an 18-inch barrel or so. So it's a pretty hefty gun, but when you get into these battle rifle, when you get to the battle rifle category, you're looking at heavier guns generally. The FAL, on the other hand, is about a 9.5 pound gun with a 21-inch barrel and about 43 inches, 44 inches in overall length, which is kind of long, a little bit heavier. The weight is negligible in my opinion, and the barrel length, I mean, it is 4 inches long, or it is about 5-6 inches longer. Is that right? It's about 3 inches longer, and the overall length is about 4 inches longer, which probably isn't so negligible. But then again, you can get shorter barreled FNs easier than you can get a shorter barreled HK G3. So those are all the negligible differences, or the similarities between the two rifles. We want to get into the actual differences, and I'm going to go from when I was talking about mag size and mag change, we can get directly into magazine costs, because that's a big thing right there. The magazine costs on the FALs are going to be about $20 or so, depending on where you're getting them from, or also depending on the time period. Right now we're at the beginning of 2015. I haven't checked exactly what the mag prices are now, but I think the last time I saw them was about a couple months ago, and they're about $20 or so. The H&K G3, on the other hand, mag prices are way different. They used to be about 99 cents or $1 or so each. Generally, you can find them from $3 up to $15, depending on what you're looking at. For $3, you'll find the aluminum ones. $3 to $10, you'll find the aluminum ones, and $10 to $15, you'll probably find the steel ones. But you should be able to find them in between $3 and $5 for the 20-round magazines. And the aluminum ones are standard magazines. They're not knockoffs or anything like that. So there's a big difference in magazine cost between the two, which is something that someone who's probably looking for a fun gun or a range toy or SHTF, you're going to be considering that, something a little bit cheaper, so you can probably get more, stock up more on it and whatnot. So definitely the HK93 has the upper hand in that category right there, having cheaper magazines, which you got to feed your gun. You got to have those magazines. Of course, you want multiple on hand just in case you damage one or something like that. The next difference between the two is the trigger. And it's actually a very big difference between the two. Now, if you're coming off the A.R. platform, I'm going to say that the FN is going to lend itself to be easier to learn how to shoot the rifle because of the trigger is pretty much the same. Well, not exactly the same. It's a little bit closer in the sense that it has a very crisp, clean break. Like I said, both these guns are unloaded, so it has a little bit of take up here, but it's very light take up. You can get through it real quickly, and then you get to the actual trigger, and there was a little bit of actual take up before we made that clean break there. So it's a very nice, crisp, stiff trigger. Not heavy, crisp, and slightly stiff, I would say, but very, very comfortable overall. I would say a very nice trigger. I like it more than the A.R. trigger, in my opinion, obviously. The H&K G3, on the other hand, has a completely different trigger. In here, it's a much more mushier, got a lot of spring in it, and you have this initial take up here, then you have the take up before the trigger breaks, and it's very springy and squishy, and it's completely different. It's not bad. It's a good trigger. It's not gritty or anything like that. It's just really different. So if you're coming off the A.R. platform, it's going to be a little bit different for you, and it's going to be harder to get used to. But it is also different between the two in that I feel like you will get better. You will have a better shot group with a rifle like that because of the trigger being more crisp and have a nice clean break to it, whereas this one's got a lot of spring in it, or slop. So the triggers are very different. And I would have to say that the FAL has the upper hand in that category with the triggers being different. This one has a better trigger in my opinion. And of course, like I said, that's my opinion. And now we can move on to the next one, which is the operation, which is probably the biggest difference between the two, which is that the FAL is a gas-operated rifle, piston impingement, and the HKG3 is a delayed roller blowback system. Let's talk about this one first. You have a gas port up here in the front, goes to this gas port, and the gas shoots. Some of the gas shoots back onto a piston, and that piston has has a rod on it coming back and knocking a carrier, which unlocks the bolt and gets the empty round out, and the next round pops up and goes into the chamber. So that's how this rifle operates. The HKG3 is completely different. Now I'm kind of going over this because maybe some of you don't know the differences between the two, but you're kind of wondering. That's why I'm doing it. This rifle, on the other hand, no gas port on it. This is just a front sight tower. There's no port, nothing connecting to the back of this. This is a delayed roller blowback. You can find videos, I think animated videos on both these rifles describing their mechanism. I'll quickly go over this one too. This one's a little bit more complicated in the sense that the way the delayed part works on it. It has a couple rollers in here, keeps the bolt locked into the chamber, or actually into the barrel extension there, and the round, once it gets fired, and the pressure dropped to a safer level, the bolt will back out and it will start the extraction process. And once it starts coming back, it's the gas between the bullet and the shell is what's causing this carrier to come back, and this carrier has to be of high mass to slow it down. And there's also a recoiling spring in here, and then there's a buffer in the back to keep it from bouncing off the back. Now, the operation on this, being that it's completely different, lends itself to the next biggest difference, which is the recoil impulse. You got a giant chunk of steel moving back and forth on this rifle, changing the center of gravity on it, causing all this movement, which is why the recoil impulse on this is generally known to be a little bit more violent. People just say it's more violent than FNFAL. It's a little bit more violent, as you guys will see in the slow motion video coming up, because the giant chunk of steel moving back and forth. Now, here in the videos that are coming up, you're going to see what I call a controlled pair, which is a very slow 2 shots, because both shots hit on target, and then the uncontrolled pair, which is what I call it when you do a quick double tap and maybe the first shot hits but the second one doesn't. So in the first video here, you're going to, of the H&K91, the G3, you're going to see the first shot and the second shot. And what you can probably, the first thing you're going to be looking at maybe is the shoulder to see how much I'm moving back in the video. You can look at that, but I don't think that's a good indicator of the recoil impulse of the rifle. You got to look at the entire rifle, and then you got to focus at the muzzle end to see how the rifle actually moves after it's fired. And you'll see, if you're looking at the muzzle, how much it goes up and how much it goes down. And you can see that inflection, and you can use the backdrop as a guide, as a reference to see how much it actually moves. Now, when you look at the slow motion controlled pair of the FAL, you're going to see how much the muzzle moves up and down, as well as the overall rifle, how it moves. You'll notice between the two that the FAL kind of moves in a straight line back into my shoulder versus the G3 kind of moves a little bit up, and it kind of moves me around a little bit more. If you see, also, the rifle will go, it'll do a little bit of wobble like this, but you probably won't notice that it actually does wobble side to side as well. Now, if we move on to the uncontrolled pair here, the quick two succession rounds, you'll see that the H&K, you'll see how much it moves. It moves a whole lot more than the FN. And that, hopefully this right here is what shows you the actual differences between the two and when they're dynamic, you know, when they're being fired. And you can see in there how much the FN actually doesn't move, and the G3 moves way more. So, which is the, you know, in that category, I would have to say the FN FAL gets that. It is a little bit more controllable, and when I mean a little bit, it's a little bit more. It's not a whole lot more, but it is noticeable, so it's worth noting. Now, a lot of people will say, oh no, it's way more, you know, way more controllable and this and that. If you think it is, that's fine. They're very close. They'll both do the job sufficiently. Again, like I asked you in the beginning, what's your need? What do you want it to do? That's a very big thing. If you're military or LEO, you know, law enforcement, and for some reason they're saying you can pick, you know, FAL or G3, you know, 91 HK91. Which one do you want? Between the two, you can go test them out, and you'll see that the recoil is going to be different on this one versus the HK91. And I would probably say, you know, I can't actually speak to what military personnel would want, or maybe a law enforcement officer would want. But I would assume that you would want a rifle that has a little bit better recoiling characteristics. So let's talk about something that I can actually talk about, which is the SHTF and the fun and the range toy category. For SHTF, between the two, if you're going to be taking precision shots, you probably want this. If you're trying to be thinking you're going to be hosing down lead down range, then maybe the HK is not a bad idea either. Actually, both will fit the bill, no problem. But personally, I would pick this up. And the reason is because I'm really comfortable with it. Overall, the trigger and the recoiling impulse of it, they actually work together really well, and I like it. As far as fun, you can't go wrong with either one. I wouldn't be worried about it. I just buy either or. The price difference between the two, I think, is also not too much. The PTR-91's about $1,000. You find a DSA, you might be spending $1,000, maybe a little bit over $1,000 to get one, and their price is almost the same. So I wouldn't be too worried in that category. As far as a range toy, of course they're both going to work great. But if you're going to be bench resting, this rifle is going to be a little bit better for you, because when you set it down on sandbags and you start shooting, the first round, your first round's not going to disrupt your setup and everything, where you have your rifle nicely, you know, set on those sandbags. When you fire, it's not going to move so much. But when you get the G3 all nestled in on top of its sandbags, as soon as you fire that first round, it moves quite a bit, and it will slide off to the side, and you'll notice that more violent reaction, especially if you want to, you know, calm down and take a few controlled shots there. So those are things to note if you're looking at it as a range toy. If you can get both, they're great guns. Neither one is a bad gun. They're both great. So don't think that this is by far way more better than the HK91 or anything like that. Again, this is my opinion. I like this rifle more. I think this is a better rifle by only a little bit more. If I could only get that one, that's not a problem. I would take it in a heartbeat. It's still a good gun. So that's the video for you guys. Just did a quick little comparison between the two, between the HK91 and the G3 here. See if I can get them both in the shot here, and hopefully you guys got my opinion there. If you guys have your own thoughts and stuff that you guys want to express, please leave them down below in the comment section. I don't mind. And if you guys want to add anything, also please leave it down below. If you got any questions, let me know, and I'll try to answer them as much as I can. Other than that, that's the video for you guys today. V8 Merc, signing out.